Do you remember when we walked through the ships at the San Diego Maritime Museum? Well, that is just a fraction of the ships and boats and other floaty things bobbing around in this bay, and the old stories that go along with them add a hint of flavoring. The very first recorded description of this land was that it was a very good enclosed port. That is because the land from the Silver Strand, Coronado, Spanish Flight, North Island, and Point Loma protect the bay from winds and storms, making it a great place to dock a ship or a boat. So it's no wonder why the US Navy have multiple bases and carriers scattered around the area. However, back then the bay was much more shallow and larger ships couldn't get too far in before, of course, getting beached. Seriously. I've got books and books about San Diego, so I'm going to show you this one. This is the crew of the USS Bennington on July of 1905. 4 months later, there was an explosion on that ship. To prevent the ships from sinking, it was tugged into the bay, which was much more shallow back then. Still, 65 sailors died in the tragedy. Back then, San Diego was just a small city, but the shock of the news really made them feel. So, to honor the dead, they buried them in Fort Rosecrans about 2 days later. 3 years later, in January of 1908, a small obelisk was dedicated on the site. The first explorer to visit the area was Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, who sailed up the coast in the fleet, his flagship called the San Salvador. I learned that they're actually building a replica near the harbor, so I decided to stop by and check it out. It's not as big as some of the other ships I've seen here, but from the skeleton, one can tell that it is a sturdy one. Originally built in Navidad, Mexico, the San Salvador was a 200-ton galleon. It was launched in June 27, 1542, and by September 28th, it landed near Ballast Point, where he named the land San Miguel. There was an interesting entry in Cabrillo's log in September 28, 1542 that read, on the following Thursday, they traveled about 6 leagues across the north-northwest coast and discovered an enclosed harbor which was very good. They named it San Miguel. If you look at the map here, San Miguel is exactly where San Diego would be. So, where's San Diego? That story would come in 1602 when Sebastian Vasqueno sailed with his fleet up the coast and was like, these coordinates are off and I'm confused. I'm just going to call the place San Diego. The new San Salvador began construction here in 2011 and is about 92 feet long and will join the Star of India and the other ships at the Maritime Museum when it is finished. There is a nice view of the area from here, but for today's modern ships, you have NASSCO in National City, which has a pretty cool looking dry dock. It opened here in 1944 as National Iron Works. In 1949, it renamed itself to National Steel and Shipbuilding Company, or NASSCO. Today, it's contracted by the Navy to build certain classes of ships, like the Mercy, which was built in 1974. Back in the 1940s, San Diego grew exponentially and became home of the Pacific Fleet. They even made recruiting videos from here and hired big-time actors to add to the appeal of joining the military and serving your country. The base where this old movie called Meet the Fleet was filmed is still around and is now a shopping center with a few hotels scattered about. In reality, this was a former boot camp where recruits came to train before being sent out to the world. Because it was a Navy boot camp, they learned a lot about life at sea by training on a ship. I trained in Great Lakes, Illinois, where I served on a big ship called the USS Marlinspike. This ship, however, is named the USS Recruit. It feels like an actual ship, but a third of the size of a destroyer ship, and it's stuck on the land, and mainly was used for mooring and various other activities. As many as 50,000 troops a year trained on the USS Recruit, and it was decommissioned in 1967, giving it 18 years of service until in 1982, when it was recommissioned again as a guided missile frigate, and temporarily renamed as a USS Neversail. Today, it is now a historical landmark. Speaking of landmarks, let's visit the iconic USS Midway. It was commissioned in 1945 to fight the Japanese in World War II and was named after the famous Battle of Midway, but the war ended before it could be launched. Right after the Second World War, the Cold War between the US and USSR began. Operation Frostbite was something that happened in 1946, the year after it was commissioned. Its mission was simple: take the ship up to the freezing seas of Greenland to simply train in the cold. It later was used to test fire rocket launches from the deck and was the first ship in history to successfully do it. It also spent some time in the Mediterranean Sea. After a couple of upgrades in the 50s and 60s, it did finally manage to see battle in the Vietnam War and the first war in Iraq called Operation Desert Storm. It is the length of about 3 football fields and is 3 stories high. It is so large, it couldn't fit through the Panama Canal. To put it bluntly, for 10 years, it was the largest ship in the world. Okay.
All together, guys, right there in the center. Perfect. And 1, 2, and 3.
Time to check out the insides. At its height, the Midway was home to over 4,000 sailors. That's like a small city. The ship is an aircraft carrier, which basically means it housed and transported many aircraft, and they were even able to take off and land planes on the deck. After 47 years of service, it was decommissioned in 1992. In 2003, they began converting it into the museum it is today, and it now sits in the Embarcadero in San Diego Bay, not too far from the Star of India. The size is majestic and fits the landscape of the city perfectly, and the tours here are very hands-on.
Right now it's about 70 degrees. It feels a lot warmer. In the Western Pacific this summer is 120 degrees. This flight deck would have been like a frying pan. Our flight deck personnel, the average age is 19 years of age, and they'll spend 12, 14 hours a day on this flight deck.
All right, here we go. Here we 3, 2, 1. Woo! Zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. As if I wasn't having enough fun, we now go down to the decks below. No tour guide, just me, my friends, and my camera. We spent hours down there. You'd think that we were at a large playground or something. Oh, that is awesome. First of all, there's that ugly guy again. God, look at that gut. And then it says, back in 15. What do you want? We got ham, we got chicken, we got, what else did they say? Ribs. Pies. We got, what else?
Bacon.
Everything.
Eggs. Oh my god, talking about a blast from the top.
Oh my goodness. That's a, girls. Way before you were born, computers used to look like that. That was the monitor. That's how thick it was. Surprisingly, the computer itself is kind of small, but look at that keyboard.
We have to go to the brig.
Well, which way is the brig?
Down.
Jamie, can you tell me a bedtime story?
Once upon a time.
Oh, time to get up.
No.
Reverie. Oh. I know there's 5 racks, 1 toilet in front of all of them. And this is how you would look if you were to take your it's not comfortable. Just outside the Midway, there are a few memorials in the area, but the most prominent one is the Kissing Sailor statue based on the famous picture taken in Times Square at the very end of World War II. They had a temporary one here back in 2007, but replaced it with this permanent one in 2012 in honor of VJ Day, and it adds to the beauty of the Embarcadero. I love it.